So if you haven't seen the news already, Canelo Alvarez has reportedly got out his 3-fight contract with PBC, opting to move back to Matchroom and fight under DAZN. And today I want to unpack what this means for Canelo Alvarez and for boxing itself. And first off, let's address the elephant in the room, and that's the bitter disappointment that the blockbuster fight with Benavidez is not going to happen. And I'm sure, like most boxing fans, I was really hoping that this would get over the line this year at some point, whether that was going to be May or September. And like I'm sure most of you are, it leaves a sour taste in terms of even wanting to watch Canelo fight next. And there's rumours that it is going to be Jaime Munguia on May 4th, or I've even seen reports that it could be even Edgar Berlanga. And in no way am I saying these guys don't have a chance against Canelo. It's more the fact that David Benavidez has pretty much been waiting 2 years to get a shot at the WBC title, which Canelo has been holding on to. And as a champion, you have to fight your mandatories. You have to fight the guys that are waiting in line for the shot. As far as I know, he was always next in line. And even the news of Benavidez moving up in weight to fight the former Ukrainian light heavyweight champion Govstik just shows you that they have given up on this potential clash. And last year, after Canelo signed this historic 3-fight deal, there was so much potential with the fights that they could have made. Obviously the Jermell Charlo fight wasn't ideal, but at the time before the fight, it was still an intriguing idea with two undisputed champions going up against each other. However, it really ended up being a walk in the park for Canelo. And when this starts to happen, you kind of start to agree with some of the cherry-picking comments that some fans make. And you have to wonder, is it because the financials weren't there from PBC? Because of Showtime leaving the sport at the end of 2023? And although they've partnered up with Amazon for a recent pay-per-view, there's still a lot of uncertainty about the long-term future in terms of what platform or network they will mainly fight under. And I guess from Canelo Alvarez's point of view, you can maybe understand the concerns about this. There's no guarantee Amazon Prime is going to be a success at first. There was always going to be a bedding in period, compared to DAZN, who have actively been participating in the sport for the last 8 years. And obviously Canelo Alvarez has a very good relationship with Eddie Hearn from Matchroom Boxing, especially from their first time working together, where they had a kind of historic run for Canelo, winning against Callum Smith, then Billy Joe Saunders, winning the trilogy versus Gennady Golovkin, and then that massive night in Mexico versus John Ryder. Although there was a loss in there with Dmitry Bivol as well. And I guess in the case of Eddie Hearn himself, he will be absolutely licking his lips at this opportunity. And the route I kind of see this going is that they do take the fight with Edgar Berlanga for May 5th. And of course, no doubt, they will be keeping an eye on the fight between Bivol and Beterbiev. And we all know Canelo is chasing that rematch with Dmitry Bivol. And if he was to come out victorious, I wouldn't be surprised if Canelo and Matchroom try their best to get that over the line and no doubt push for an undisputed showdown at light heavyweight. However, there's also no guarantee of that happening in itself if Beterbiev was to win. I also guess with Bivol and Beterbiev scheduled to fight in June and Canelo most likely to fight in September, I suspect a fight with Munguia would be perfect for Mexican Independence Weekend. While at the same time, we could be in for a huge surprise. For example, no one expected Canelo to go on and face Jermell Charlo, and was something that came out of nowhere. While there's also the reports of Terence Crawford also leaving his rematch clause with PBC, with Errol Spence making him a free agent. So once again, there's always the possibility of that Canelo versus Crawford fight. Maybe Benavidez could leave PBC if they can't resolve their issue with the network sooner or later, as there's no guarantee this will actually work out with Amazon Prime. And boxing can be a very risky business. There's no guarantees in terms of the pay-per-views in some cases. But at the end of the day, boxing is a business, and with Canelo Alvarez at the top of the tree, in terms of the amount of draw and money he makes in the sport, it's hard to see it going any other way than his. Now personally, it'd be great to see the sanctioning bodies come in and put the mandatories in place to force Canelo into these fights. But as always, it comes down to money and these governing bodies wanting to get a piece of the pie, and would rather let Canelo sit in the belts instead of actually letting guys who have been waiting and deserving of their shot. Now, in no way am I saying Canelo Alvarez is scared of someone like David Benavidez, however it just appears he's clearly taking the safer route. And with either one of those fighters in Munguia and Berlanga most likely to happen, let's have a quick look at how those matchups could take place. Now for Berlanga, he had 16 first round knockouts in a row, and at one point looked like he was the biggest puncher in the sport. However, you also have to mention how he was very well matched up, so he could get these knockouts. And as soon as he stepped up against better opposition, the knockouts started to dry up, and his performances simply just weren't up to scratch. And it was only this year in February where he got a knockout win over McCrory, the first since he's really started to step up in opposition. And that's maybe the issue with him. He's always seeking the knockout, which of course can be very dangerous. But against Canelo Alvarez, who's a very intelligent fighter, you can see him totally luring Berlanga into a trap and even getting the job done. Especially when you consider Berlanga's struggled against guys at a much lower level than Canelo Alvarez. And although there would be the Mexican-Puerto Rican rivalry that would definitely spark interest in that matchup, I just can't see anything but a Canelo Alvarez win. In terms of Jaime Munguia, he's actually a fighter I find very entertaining to watch, and although technically maybe he leaves himself a bit open and gets caught far too often, however, there's no denying his heart and his energy to keep pushing the fight, and he looked a lot better in his recent matchup with John Ryder, who he knocked out, unlike Canelo Alvarez, while it's also two Mexican fighters going toe to toe. And it could even be a passing of the torch fight, who knows, maybe Munguia could be able to get the job done. But as we have seen throughout Jaime Munguia's career, he can be very raw at times and make mistakes, while also being quite inconsistent. However, somehow he always just manages to come back. And out of these two fights, I think this would be a much more entertaining fight and a competitive contest compared to the Berlanga fight. Now obviously these are just my initial thoughts on the fights. There's no guarantee that these will happen. There could be a surprise waiting for us, as we saw last year. But like I said, I think the most obvious route would be these two fights, then a potential showdown with the winner of Bivol and Beterbiev at the end of this year, or even in May 2025. But overall, I have to admit, it is pretty disappointing, this situation. We all know the fight that he should really be having, and it's not happening. But yeah guys, I'd love to hear your thoughts on Canelo Alvarez moving back over to DAZN. Do you think this has anything to do with PBC not being able to get this deal over the line? Or do you think Canelo Alvarez just doesn't want the fight? I'd love to know. This has been Jamie from Boxing Life. Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed this, make sure to subscribe. And as always guys, I'll see you in the next one.